Greetings, kia ora. I think we'll kick in, start on time. My name is Brian Flaherty. I'm from the University of Auckland, in the library there. We have an interesting session that's starting now, so just to make sure you're in the right place, this is the Blue Room, and this is Experiencing Education at the University of Auckland. So hopefully you are in the right place. Just brief intros. Stephen Whiteside is the Chief Digital Officer at the University of Auckland, responsible for digital transformation strategies at the university and overseeing the IT function. The National eScience Infrastructure Team, which coordinates supercomputing and data support to New Zealand universities and CRIs, reports to Stephen. As a CDO, he is particularly interested in customer centricity, which actually read as eccentricity to start with. That's a bit of a pressure on you now, Stephen. And also I'd like to introduce Vanessa Pai, who is the digital business architect with a background in customer experience and agile transformation. And prior to the University of Auckland, she was a global business transformation leader at Fisher & Paykel Appliances. Over to you two.
Actually, I'm not sure if the term Chief Digital Officer is a joke anyway. Gartner say it'll disappear in 5 years because all change will be digital. And from my perspective, one of my main interests as a Chief Digital Officer is actually looking at how the university's student-centric and customer-centric. You often hear those terms used interchangeably. Some people are religious about it, I'm not. But so I'll give you a digital perspective on that and look at our Student First program, our student journey mapping, and also then look at some of the connections in terms of actually doing that student journey mapping and how does that influence the university. Vanessa here, who's with me, who has been actually doing all the work, but we've been designing this program together. And if you look at the modern enterprise, this is a McKinsey analysis. You know, you have Gartner analysis, McKinsey, and all these things, you use them. But in all the terms of sort of looking at what does a digital enterprise do to be sort of customer-centric, all these things actually apply to universities. And if you look at some of the things that occur using this particular model, say in the student area, taking those decision-making, sort of the connectivity, looking at the whole automation innovation thing, from prospects through to students, through to alumni, you can see there's a whole lot of things that occur across the sector. And the real question is, as an institution, if we're looking at digital transformation, how do we actually be connected and how we put these things together? And the other thing about students, of course, at the very top there, you've got the issue of the voice of the customer, where we used to be airlines doing it, and obviously more and more universities are now doing student journey mapping to actually get that voice of the customer and to embed that into programs. Just out of interest, how many of your institutions are doing student journey mapping? Yeah, there's a few. Oh, actually, the two Auckland is in there too, but a few others as well. It's a very simple technique. The actual issue is actually taking what you get from your students who love doing it. They just love putting post-it notes up and telling you what they don't like and do love. But the issue is, how do we actually connect that to doing things? And if you look at our vision around our Student First program, like everyone else, that sort of student experience is something that you all have in your institutions that you aspire to. But what we did want was to develop a university-wide experience framework so that we can be actually focused on what is a student digital strategy and actually integrate those different issues into something that's quite complete for the student. Just to expand on the goal, you know, some things about that you'll have too. What is a transformative student experience? Most of it's about teaching and learning, actually, if you look at things. But also what's unique about Auckland, just as your institutions, you'll look at what's unique for your institution. And there we are really looking at sort of having a strategy for students that's fit for the digital age, that's actually based around what the students say they want, and so we can be more real for them. I'll skip the data slide. You all know about data, so we have that. And I think some of the guiding principles, once again, we're trying to actually make sure that we reflect these guiding principles across all our programs. Like, are these guiding principles rocket science? No, they're not. But what is important is that we actually have had a lot of things in our programs that are in silos, and what we are trying to do is to make sure we reach across the programs the university has, be it student retention, through to upgrading the student support system to ensure that we actually are being consistent. And our student journey mapping, we're sort of identifying key touch points. The priority investments, we're looking at what students say, and then we're looking across our portfolio and trying to align individual initiatives to do the things that you all want to do, which of course are around increasing achievement and improving the student experience. But that issue of co-design, we've had that introduced, talking about that at our senior leadership team. And it's interesting looking at a student journey map with our senior leadership team. They actually get out of their chairs and actually stand around it rather than actually sitting at their chairs. So this idea of co-design and bringing that concept through, we're trying to be much better at that, as I think all of us are. So here's what a student journey map looks like. It's hard to get it from the resolution, but the concept's quite simple, where you have a lot of different channels. Students look at these different channels, be they a digital channel or a face-to-face channel or simply a university campus channel. We put them in different colours. We have the students standing around. We look at actually what happens before they arrive at university, when they're here and afterwards. We actually had a few more zones than that. We had applying and enrolling as different zones, but at the end of the day, before they arrive, when they're here, and after they leave are the three we came down to. And then, of course, we're taking the opportunity then to mark this with things such as what's a pain point, what's good, what's bad, what are opportunities, and then take the information out of that to summarise out what key actions are. It's a pretty simple technique. It all revolves around post-it notes. Students love it. You don't have to give them much incentivisation, even though we do give them some food vouchers, of course, the currency of all universities. Trick is actually having this sort of experience at the heart of what we do and then influencing our programs with the outcome. And from a student perspective, this is actually, I think, quite consistent with the things that have come out of at the conference, but we do need to make sure that we do embed them into our programs. For us, one of the big things in terms of decisions online and actually getting rid of queues, consumer-grade applications, the issue of simplicity is very important. What students actually have said to us they crave is feedback, and that issue of getting good, consistent feedback. And a lot of the work we've got that comes out of what we're doing with our students is actually about their course choices and how are they doing. We've had a lot of focus on analytics at this program, and that's the same for us as an institution. And of course, having more interaction, that's probably for us the hardest area. We're a research university, and moving minds in our learning and teaching program is probably the hardest in terms of getting consistent outputs. And so then if you come down in terms of here's what our students are saying, prepare and engage me. The feedback from our students have made us look much more back in terms of our prospects and how they're prepared. We're finding 2 of our courses, maths and stats, which are foundational courses, we've got pass rates which are lower than they should be, and we're examining those courses both from perspective of are we over teaching them, but also how well are we preparing those people who are coming into those courses, and are we helping them get the right options, and are they simple? And this whole issue of then helping decide and getting better digital governance. We all making it easier to apply, of course. That welcoming aspect, very important. A lot of focus on this conference and tracking progress, and obviously that's an important thing. So all these things here, including employability and future options, at a big level, they're things that you'd expect to see. But this has actually allowed us to have the conversation with the senior leadership team about folding these in and making sure that our portfolio of programs is comprehensive around the student. We all have seen these sort of things too. Obviously, digital teaching and learning is a key part of our program. How we actually have the digital campus, Michelle Dickinson, of course, talking about tracking students. That's all very real at the moment, and having the right policy to how we use the information is pretty important. The issues of looking at supporting our researchers, we actually, and how that flows back to students, we're looking at. And then, of course, how we actually are transforming our digital organisation that is occupying all of us. We started, as I said, with quite a few zones, but in the end, simplicity counts. So we actually are having our engagement with the senior leadership team around those 3 zones. In terms of being a student, the deans themselves have got very excited. They think there's a different experience in different faculties. And of course, an arts experience is quite different from that, say, in engineering, where it's quite prescribed. Interestingly enough, in our student journey map for arts, they've got a McDonald's symbol on it, because they're looking at what's the arts degree and how is it perceived. And they're starting from some people having that perception that arts graduates get to work at McDonald's, etc., rather than have a full career. And how do they actually change their degree and curricula for that to ensure it's rich? Whereas engineering, of course, would not have that perception. If you drill down to some being a student, we're looking at having these types of experiences, having the confidence to succeed, and if you're looking at the sort of types of things that we have there, once again, they're all things I think that you'll find are common things that you have with your students. But if we can actually shape these together and put them together, we can get a better outcome than what we've done historically, which has had individual units look at individual pieces. It's interesting, when we first started the student journey mapping and asked the question, who owns the student experience, we had long and lengthy debates between those who didn't know and those who were desperate to own it, even though they did a little slice of it. Once again, we also want to look at what's unique about the student experience. Sometimes we'll use detailed things like around our vibrant campus life and facilities. For example, we have a partner organisation called Purple Shirt, where we might follow and drill down students in study spaces and get their experience and stories. But the key thing, once again, is actually having that strong student focus. And then in terms of making connections, we've done all this work. We've got strong input from students. We've got information coming that what they like and what they don't like. What's important then is that we act on it. So at university level, I showed you sort of indicative university map, and we're using that template to come down into faculty level, where engineering, arts and science have started maps, and there are education and some other faculties are actually looking at how they do that. From a faculty level, deans have been the biggest champions of student journey mapping, which is quite interesting actually, and it really allows us to have that sort of student-centric debate. And then they have a group that meets every second week for the deans and the vice-chancellor, so they've decided that's their oversight group, and they're looking at, are the actions they're going to take out of finding their individual faculty maps, are they local issues, like redesigning the arts degree is a local issue, or are they a group of faculties, say STEM faculties, or are they things that should be university initiatives, and having that dialogue and discussion with them. At the university map, we've also looked at different persona areas, so looking at Maori and Pacifica, also looking at some of the experiences that our postgraduate students have and trying to get more defined about those. And then from looking at university portfolio, what we're looking to do is to sort of say at university level, how do we integrate things together? So the Student First program is an umbrella for student journey mapping. Like most universities, we have a retention group. Anyone have a retention group in the universities to improve retention? I'm sure you do. The student analytics, and looking at some of the strategies we have, artificial intelligence and how we actually model our student service centres. Looking also within what are we doing around how we line up our prospects and from a marketing perspective, and looking at how we actually get students from different channels, identify who they are, and so we can line up those prospects better, understand them more, and also in terms of our web program. So that oversights the equivalent of our Chief Operating Officer, the DVC operations, and there we're looking at sort of saying, by being student-centric, what's the information that we get from using the simple technique of student journey mapping and embedding it in our programs. So some observations there. The process is popular. Vanessa has been conducting the workshops, and the students have quite a buzz out of doing it, don't they? Yes? Vanessa's wondering when I'll get her to interact or not. She's keen not to. But the the students have been very enthusiastic, and it's interesting how the post-it note is the tool of the digital age. Still is. I don't think technology's got a wee way to go before we can actually move them easily around and have discussion forums around them. There's been strong focus among our faculty identifying cohorts, say in science and some of those general schools, and how we actually break them down. So our Faculty of Science is interested in looking at mapping not just for the science sort of area, but looking at the different cohorts, because when you have 5,000 or 6,000 students in your faculty, you're then sort of coming down to what are the groups and how we actually look at those perspectives from their experience and their particular risks. Not all service divisions are enthusiastic. Some want to own their little bit, and the whole idea of having outside influence isn't always popular, because they want to control their bit. Integration across initiatives is actually quite hard, because what generally happens is initiative will be formed around, I want to do this, and then actually getting some outside influence about, hey, so there's some different things you can add into this that actually can take some debate. And at the moment, University of Auckland reshaping its teaching and learning program, which is pretty fundamental, of course, how we support teaching and learning for the student experience, and our research support. So they are big things, and so there's not a lot of time left for them after looking at reshaping teaching and learning and research for the customer experience. So we're having to fit ourselves into the program. How will we know we're enabling the student experience we want? These are all the sort of things that come through our student satisfaction ratings. We want to increase retention by 2 to 3%. That's actually quite significant in terms of numbers. And those things come across in terms of all those other areas. But if you look at, we've done an investment logic map in this area, and the returns on actually being student-centric and student-focused are very high. But of course, when you look at actually who's responsible for the individual bits, they're quite diverse across the university. So, well, they finished before me. Just. So that's our sort of journey around student journey mapping, and how we're trying to use that to become more digitally centric around our students and be more focused on the students across the portfolios across the university. Any questions? Oh, got one over here, and you're supposed to be organising this. Yes. I'll get Vanessa to answer this. Our initial student journey, we did an indicative map from support staff because we wanted to teach the senior leadership team what a student journey map looked like. We then validated it using groups of students that were focused on supporting the contact centre, so they saw a lot of student problems as well as they had their own experiences, and then we went into deeper dives into different areas after that. So we actually started off with an assumptive map so we could actually demonstrate the process to the senior leadership team and get them off their chairs and looking at a map and looking at where the pain points were in different areas. So it was an assumptive student journey from the start. We use our students to validate it and take us further. Yes? So we're looking at the different channels with which they interact with the university. Now, some of those channels are digital, some of those are analog, some of those are face-to-face, some of those channels are actually the physical campus and what that sort of presents to them. And we're asking them to look at their experience and actually what they liked about their experience and what they didn't as our starting point. So it's actually trying to get them to think across the different channels and then when they use sticky, post-it notes, they get a whole world. They get a whole cluster of things, and you get and you can shape these up and sharpen them. But it's been quite a broad introduction for them. No, it's as it is. It's what they have experienced now, in order that it gives us guidance on where to go and improve. So things like, we don't get enough feedback, so we don't know enough about how well we're doing with our course choices. When we actually are looking at our course choices, we're only getting the faculty input, not university input, and it's too narrow because I might, particularly if I'm doing conjoints, these types of things. Yes, we've got a program to make sure we're following them up either at local level or at university level in feedback. Catriane. So at university level, we know those indicators are there. We also know a lot of things contribute to those indicators. So in some respect, looking at our success, it's actually more about how we influence projects that are contributing to those contributors. So we are hopeful that our end outcome is that the Student Success Program, for example, will succeed in its goal of raising retention 2 to 3%. But there's a number of factors that contribute to that. So what we are really looking for our success rates is how the things that come up from our student mapping sessions are taken up by other initiatives and our success in doing that. We will claim a share of some of those bigger indicators, but they are complex in terms of the contribution to them. Yes? I skipped over analytics bit, but analytics are a big part of any university in looking at student information. And we are trying to get a lot better at analytics. Our 360-degree view of the customer using a combination of CRM-type data and prospect data within the CRM, business intelligence from various different sources, including tracking where students' location and all those sort of things, and artificial intelligence to tie the top, at the top level. We are looking at how we get better at that, but analytics is pretty key. But this program's actually informing our need for analytics. The analytics are not actually informing these programs because they're mainly the voice of the customer, but analytics clearly comes out of it. Yes? That's a big question. I said before, we are trying to make sure that we are successful and what's identified gets enacted, which I suppose what you're asking is an extension of that. And from our perspective, we're not yet as fully centric across all the programs and areas we want to be yet, and that will be a measure of success. That the first point of any new initiative, they come back to the voice of the customer information. And we're still on that journey. I think we're still, from a student perspective, still working that out, but we'd like to come back to the ones we've asked so that they can actually see that they've had an influence. It's much more powerful if the students you've worked with can actually see you've given influence, yes. right, well, thank you very much for your questions. Appreciate it.